I'm happy to talk about the topic of children and stewardship with you. I was 10 years old and a pathfinder at a campout in the rugged Paladuro Canyon in Texas. There is a plant called the prickly pear cactus, and it has large thorns on it that are very painful. You don't want to get near the prickly pear cactus. Well, my friend Penny and I went down to the river in this canyon and we saw a prickly pear cactus. Now we remembered that ingenious folk have learned how to make candy and jelly from the prickly pear cactus. And we saw this pad of cactus floating on the river and we went down to investigate it. We looked at it and it didn't see any big thorns on it. And we picked it up and it didn't seem to be dangerous. And Penny looked at me and she said, "Bite it. See if it's good," she challenged. Well, I hate to admit it, but I did bite it. And no, it didn't taste good. I didn't get a thorn, but what I didn't realize is that the cactus pad was covered with barbed stickers, and they lodged themselves in my tender gums and my tongue, and I had a mouthful of stickers. I believe that if children followed the principles of true stewardship, they would be spared the grief of the many attractive but painful choices this world holds out to them. Stewardship can dramatically improve a child's life and those around them, and that's the reason that I want to talk about children and stewardship with you today. Matthew 6:24, "No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon or riches. You cannot serve the God of this world and the God of heaven." Good stewardship has benefits. It spares the individual pain individually, and it causes a positive ripple effect as it helps them to benefit their churches, their families, their communities, and even the world. Ellen White mentions in the book Child Guidance some attributes for happiness: obedience, self-control, thoughtfulness, large-heartedness. These are concepts that are important for children's happiness. I would like to talk about some areas that really brought home the relevance and importance of teaching stewardship to children. And that is the effects of materialism and consumerism. The aspirations of little children used to be, when I grow up, I want to be a celebrity, or I want to be very smart, or I want to be an athlete. But now it's simply, I want to be rich. Children are targeted commercially by commercial advertising, and they've been very successful at it, even in the very young. Little ones, 18 months of age, know what logos and what products are. 2.5-year-olds ask for brand names. 3.5-year-olds actually believe that the products as advertised will make them cool or brave or smart. Well, the children nag their parents to buy the product, and that is annoying, but I don't believe that's the real harm from it. I believe that it is harmful to them mentally, physically, spiritually. A large quantity of the advertising dollars are spent advertising snack foods, sugar, sugary sweets, and beverages to children. And then suddenly we have an increase in obesity and obesity-related diseases such as hypertension and diabetes type 2. Along with that comes an obsession of body image and thinness, and then you have eating disorders. The fallout from the consumer culture is that children develop the dysfunctional aspects such as depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and psychosomatic complaints. I was surprised when I learned how many children now have diagnosable mental disorders. I was chagrined and saddened to learn that the fourth leading cause of suicide in children ages, fourth leading cause of death is suicide in children ages 10 to 14. And of course, if they're focused on things and other things that will make them happy instead of looking at other people, their relationships with God and others suffer. You look at the newspaper and you see the results of the God of this world: intolerance, greed, and corruption. And I believe that stewardship is the antidote to the what's offered by the God of this world. But what could I do to teach children principles of Christian stewardship? Another canyon surrounded by rugged mountains. A man briskly leads a flock of woolly, bleating, and rather stupid sheep up the mountains. He carefully chooses a path for them and keeps a sharp eye out for both food and danger. His simple shepherd's garment can't mask his noble and military bearing. He stops and he looks at that staff crook that is in his hands, and he sighs. He's wasted a lot of opportunities, and now that he has nothing to help his people who are suffering back home. It is then that Moses sees the burning bush, and then later he sees how that simple shepherd's rod can be and do remarkable things if surrendered to God. So what do you and I hold in our hands that we can do? I discovered that what I had in my hand was a camera, some rhymes, and a funny puppy who liked to have his picture taken. And so I became engaged in an ongoing practical lesson on stewardship, and my dog Jack became Stewardship Jack. How do you reach children and their young parents who are often struggling with the same issues their children are? One non-threatening approach is through a funny dog who helps write books for parents, and the parents can read those to them. There is now a series of Stewardship Jack books that teach principles of stewardship to children. There are other products and books in process. One that I really think is interesting is 13 Programs First Teaching Stewardship to Children. This has been developed and is available now, and there is a CD songbook with songs for children on stewardship. This is designed for children's church, camp meetings, other meetings that you might have for children. Stewardship Jack is just one method that I believe God is using in North America, and it fits the culture here because so many people love dogs. But what method can you use where you live to help shape super stewards? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit more now about shaping super stewards. There are three important concepts. Children from a very young age can pick up on hypocrisy, and the most powerful method of teaching is our example. How do children see stewardship lived out in our lives? The only power that can shape super stewards is the power of genuine conversion. So that's the second principle that I think is very important to keep in mind. The first one is example. The second one is genuine conversion. So introduce your children to Jesus. And of course, it's absolutely necessary that children understand that God is the owner of everything, and He gives us our possessions and our opportunities to manage for Him as His stewards. There are 7 characteristics of super stewards, and I would like to examine 7 characteristics that, if effectively taught to children, can result in shaping super stewards, happy, well-adjusted, generous children. Faithful, happy, honest, grateful, obedient, accountable, and generous. Wouldn't you like to have that in all the children that you see? Faithful. This means to be loyal, constant, steadfast, committed, deserving trust. Stories of Joseph, Daniel, and Esther beautifully illustrate these concepts. And you can find stories of faithful pets that will help your children to understand this. Happy. Happiness is a choice. Children can learn happiness by watching us, but I believe it is a result of incorporating the principles of stewardship. Honest. This is the characteristic where you find the basic minimal requirement of a steward, tithing. According to Malachi, it is a matter of honesty. However, it is a topic that many people, even Christians, find difficult. Honesty can be taught by tithing. 1 out of every 10 of our increase should be returned to God honestly. Stewardship Jack has a book called Jack Gives Back. It teaches the principles of stewardship. And there are also songs on our stewardship CD for children that have counting mantras that will help with that. No matter our current status, we can always have a reason for gratitude to God for what He has already done for us and the future He has promised. How do you teach gratitude? Well, Stewardship Jack has a book, Happy Jack, How Much Stuff is Enough? This teaches us to be content with what we have. Unfortunately, out of a desire of parents to help their children feel good about themselves, parents shower them with things. But what really needs to be done is to teach them to look for needs of others and let them find ways to help the less fortunate. Another important aspect of teaching gratitude is teaching delayed gratification. That means waiting for something. If something is worth having, it's worth waiting for, and you appreciate it more. I'm holding in my hand a bear, a little teddy bear that belonged to my daughter. We first saw it on the store when she was a little girl about 5 years of age. She wanted it and it wasn't expensive. I could have bought it for her right then and there. But I wanted her to experience the wait, saving up her money, and purchasing it by herself. She did this, and this is still a very special bear now that she even has children of her own. You can also set up 3 banks that will help with this. One could be called spending, one could be titled giving, and one could be titled saving. Each child has a choice of whether or not they will be obedient or disobedient steward of the master. If their little hearts aren't converted, good stewardship will be forced, unpleasant, and of short duration. We must gently teach them to understand that obedience to God is a safe and positive thing. And once again, Stewardship Jack came through, and he has a book on obedience, and he teaches us that it's not cool to break a rule. Accountability is very important for a steward. There are 5 T's that we often hear about with stewardship: time, talent, treasure, which is dealing with our possessions; temple, which is our health; terra, which is dealing with the earth and the world around us. And of course, there's the stewardship of grace. We all want to hear from God this response about our accountability. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Again, Stewardship Jack has come through, and he has a book, Jack's Hats, that teaches us accountability for the talents that God has given us. Number 7, it is more blessed to give than receive. Generosity is an important message for us to teach our children. You can have a generous box where everyone plans a project, designs a bank, and together contributes voluntarily, and then takes it and actually puts it into practice. Can you imagine how pleasant it would be to have children who displayed all of these characteristics? I think an important thing that we could do for our children is to have a commitment card where they would sign a commitment that, yes, they would like to be a good steward. They would like to return their tithe. They would like to share their talents. They would like to be generous with others and with giving of their offering. I would like to encourage you to think about these things. Think about what you can do in your division as we talk about stewardship in children and as we think about these concepts. So again, the 7 characteristics are, you can help me with those, they are faithful, happy, honest, grateful, obedient, accountable, and generous.
In the quiet of the morning hour, before the rising sun, in the stillness of that early hour, before day has begun, you've got to listen, he's talking to you. Oh, can't you hear him whisper? You've got to listen until he is through. You've got to make a choice. You've got to decide to listen. If you're gonna hear his still small voice, if you're gonna hear his still small voice. The clock beside your bed says 6 a.m., a busy day ahead. You reach for your Bible and you read just one verse before you toss it on your bed. No time to listen, he's talking to you. Oh, can't you hear him whisper? You've got to listen until he is through. You've got to make a choice. You've got to decide to listen. If you're gonna hear his still small voice, if you're gonna hear his still small voice, you've got to take the time to pray. You've got to make the time each day. I hear the still small voice of the Holy Spirit. He's guiding me each day. And if you'll commit your ways unto his leading, you won't be turned away. Take time to listen. He's talking to you. Oh, can't you hear him whisper? You've got to listen until he's through. You've got to make a choice. You've got to decide to listen. If you're gonna hear his still small voice, if you're gonna hear his still small voice, listen, he's talking to you. Oh, can't you hear him whisper? You've got to listen until he is through. You've got to make a choice. You've got to decide to listen. If you're gonna hear his still small voice, if you're gonna hear his still small voice, if you're gonna hear his still small voice.
Well, now we have the opportunity to discuss some questions that people have about stewardship and children. And I'm very glad to have you experts in here with me.
Wow.
One question that I have here is that I was going to address you is there an age when children should be taught stewardship?
I want to give an answer by reading a quotation from the Spirit of Prophecy.
Okay.
It is in Great Controversy, page 265, and where Sister White says, "He planted in their young expanding minds the seeds of truth that would spring up and produce a plentiful harvest in their riper years." You see, we work with children, and what we teach them as children will follow them in later years. And the Spirit of Prophecy confirms that. And so, an age to start teaching them about stewardship, I believe that we should not wait for age. As soon as the child can say mama or papa, we should start teaching them the joy of giving, of sharing, of recognizing ownership by others. Psychology teaches us that children are by nature kind of selfish. And
We all know that.
yeah. And so from the time they're born, we have to start helping them to understand we all owe something to somebody, and that we are not the owner of life. We have to give allegiance to somebody and start showing them that they have to give.
So you're talking about the idea of respect and obedience.
Exactly. And recognizing others. We should not restrict stewardship just to money giving, because it's the management of life. And so if from childhood we have to start teaching them that.
That's right.
Yes.
Do you have anything to add to that
Well,
one?
what Israel has said is very, very good, very important. The idea of sharing is the idea of understanding that not everything that I have needs to stay with me.
Yeah.
So I learn to share. Now that might be a favorite food, it might be a favorite toy.
Exactly.
Learning how to share that is important. And also part of that is, part of stewardship at an early age is that Jesus is our friend. So all you wrap all of that together as a whole, not just segmented, but they're as a whole.
Yeah.
Jesus is our friend, therefore I want to share like Jesus shared with me.
Exactly.
Okay, that's very good. That's very good. Important concepts for us all
Certainly.
to think about.
May I make a correction? The quotation I just gave, I said great controversy, was wrong. It's child guidance.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
child
sounds like
guidance.
it might come better from there.
Certainly. Yes. Yeah.
But there are some controversies with children
Yes,
too.
definitely.
So
Definitely.
why do children need to learn about stewardship? Let's start with you this time.
Well, one of the things that's happening to our children today, they are being bombarded on commercials, on TV, children's programs, that they are not good. They're not good the way they are. They have to change. And the way they change is they buy more. They become like the other children. And one of the things stewardship teaches us, as we go back to the story of Genesis, is that indeed God made us special. God did not make
That's
junk.
good.
God made us special. So from the very beginning, children need to know that they are special. Not arrogant, not egotistical, not selfish, but they are special in God's sight. So it's very important. Even that builds self-esteem, learning at an early age.
Yeah. Yeah. It is sad that the baby boomers have produced a me generation. And I believe somewhere the me generation tend to pass that way of thinking, me, to their children now. And whatever the church can do to help them to understand that God started to give because he loved. And so we must also teach our children to give because of love. And from the early age as possible, start to teach them away from the me generation.
That's very good.
Yes.
We just have just a very few seconds left here, but I wanted to know, are only children from wealthy countries materialistic? We have time for yes or no.
I don't
No.
believe so.
No.
Right.
I don't believe so.
We always want more.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'd like to wrap up our discussion on children and stewardship today. We've looked at the importance of teaching stewardship to children and 7 characteristics of good stewards. And I'd like to wrap it up by talking about a trip that I had recently to Rome, Italy. It's a city rich with history and contrast, and I'm specifically referring to the contrast between those who have followed the God of this world and those who have followed the God of heaven. The great Caesars, they had power, they had wealth, they had everything, but along with it they had greed, corruption, and murder. It was awful. But then there were those who walked those very streets who had a wonderful relationship with God. They were godly men and women, and they walked with God and maybe even suffered a martyr's death. On those very same streets were great men like Peter, and Paul and even Martin Luther centuries later, who were good stewards of the grace of God and who were good stewards of their talents. Walking down those streets, a young boy came toward me, about 14 years of age, and on his shirt he had the words, "There is no hope." I couldn't believe it. And as I walked along, another person came by, and this person had on their shirt, "The best is yet to come."
Amen.
I thought that was a wonderful contrast in a city of contrasts. Well, I would like to challenge you that as we see the importance of teaching stewardship, that you will see, what do you have in your hand? It may not be a furry black dog like Stewardship Jack. It may not be a shepherd's crook like Moses, but you have something, a talent, a gift that you can use to help encourage children to let God be the master that He really is and be good stewards of all the things that He has. That way, they will be provided with a positive now. There is hope now. They don't have to have that dismal attitude of there is no hope, but instead they will be conscious that they have meaning and purpose in their life, that there is a use for their talents, they have responsibility, accountability, and above all of this, the best is yet to come.
Look, Daddy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Everything we own is a blessing from God. All of it belongs to Him. God only requires 1/10 to be returned to Him as an act of worship and an expression of our faithfulness to Him. Tithe is God's money, and in tithing we're simply returning to the owner what rightly belongs to Him. And as we faithfully return 1/10 of our income, we will continue to provide for us according to His promises. Tithing is one of the most tangible ways to experience God. It's a most rewarding step of faith and a wonderful testimony of our faith. Take that step of faith today and experience God's faithfulness.
This one's for Jesus.
Remember, stewardship is my all in response to God's all.